Hey there, Shavon Lindley here, CEO of Women Evolution and creator of the Forbes interview series, Rising Leaders. I am here today with legendary music manager, Vicky Hamilton. And so you can click the link below right now to read the official interview on Forbes. But after this interview, you're gonna have an opportunity to ask Vicky your questions directly. And we'll be hosting a live Q&A on Facebook 72 hours after this article goes live. So please feel free to post your questions directly to my Facebook page or in the comment section below so that we can ask your questions directly, and make sure you like the page so that way you can have an opportunity to know exactly when it goes live so you can catch it. And Vicky Hamilton is considered one of the most successful Grammy-award winning music industry executives. She has discovered, developed, or managed the careers of Guns N' Roses, Motley Crue, Poison, joined Carter Cash, and I think you've signed over 18 bands. Is that right?
That is true.
And Vicky recently released her autobiography called Appetite for Dysfunction, and she is on her book tour now. And if you're interested, you can get an autographed book on vickyhamilton.com. So thank you so much for spending your time with me today.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So
how you doing?
I'm good. I'd love to know how your career got started to begin with.
Well, I grew up in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I started out as a record store clerk. And then I went to art school, and I just decided I wanted to start managing bands, and came out and checked it out in California and decided that I wanted to move here. You know, there just didn't seem to be a lot of music opportunities in Indiana, so thought I had to move.
And what was it about, how did you know that managing bands is what you wanted to do?
I started looking after a couple of local bands, one from Toledo, Ohio called Ebenezer, and another one called Destin from Fort Wayne. And, you know, it was basically trial by error. Before that, I had managed my boyfriend's band. It's like, you know, I just learned by doing, and I started doing it, you know.
So what was it that really, I mean, you had to pick up your bags and move. So, you know, that must have been a really big thing for you. So what was it that made you finally say, okay, this is what I have to do?
Well, I was a big fan of Tom Petty, and I was doing some journalism, and I tried to get an interview with him at his upcoming concert, but nobody at the record company would give me an interview. So I pretty much stalked him in his tour bus and chased him down in South Bend, Indiana. And he graciously agreed to give me an interview. And in the end of the interview, he said to me, you know, you look like a California girl. You should just move to California. And, you know, that was kind of all it took. You know, you hear that from somebody that you admire, and it's like, okay, I'm doing it.
If you need any clearer of a sign, that's fine for you.
But I was cautious about it too. I came for a month and checked it out, and, you know, went around to the clubs and met people. And then I went back to Indiana for a year and saved money and moved, you know.
Well, how was that transition for you from Indiana to LA? It must have been a trip.
Well, it was interesting. It's like in Indiana, I find that people are pretty honest about what they do and do what they say. In LA, there's a lot of ulterior motives. So I got sort of taken advantage of in the early days that I was here. But I'm a fast learner, and got a little more cautious as time went on, you know.
And what year was that?
1981.
1981. So that was also a very, I mean, obviously 80s rock, and you know, wasn't really the most, I don't know, didn't have the greatest light on women in the music field. So that must have been,
yeah.
That must have been also, I mean, you probably were expecting, I mean, because you were already living that in Indiana, but was that, you know, different than what you were expecting it to be? Challenging, easier?
Yeah, I mean, in Indiana, it was more of a classic rock, already hit rock scenario. I didn't really know about the punk rock. When I moved to LA, it was very punk rock, and the metal scene was just starting to kick in. I had no idea what I was walking into. Sometimes you just put the blinders on and go for it. I just love music, and I was inspired by the music, and that's what made me come to California.
So you kind of overlook things because you're like, look, I got to survive, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Was there a moment where you kind of got fed up and tired of being in an industry that, was so challenging or so undervaluing to women in general?
Yeah, still happens on a daily basis, unfortunately. I mean, the entertainment industry is predominantly run by men, and it can be tough, with sexual harassment and all kinds of things. But if you want to do it, you kind of like make yourself one of the boys and just participate in any way that you can. I kind of just laughed the scenarios off and went, okay, whatever, I'm moving on.
But there was a point in your career where, you're seeing potential in artists who aren't necessarily getting the respect or the recognition that they deserve, and you had to kind of take matters into your own hand. Can you tell me more about that situation for you?
Well, when I was working at Lookout Management, I met June Carter Cash. A band I was managing called the Freewheelers opened for Johnny Cash at the House of Blues, and backstage again with Tom Petty and Rick Rubin, they were, I was saying how much I loved June Carter's performance with Johnny, and Rick Rubin was like, you should make a record with June. And I was like, yeah, I don't know anything about country music, but thank you. And the next day I got to my office and I got a message from June Carter where she said, Rick Rubin said you should make my record. And it kind of evolved from that. I fell in love with her, and nobody wanted to like make the record at the record company I was currently working at. And then I shopped it all around Hollywood and New York, and then Nashville, which was really surprising because her and Johnny Cash live in Nashville, and I just couldn't believe that nobody wanted to work with, the first lady of country music. I mean, the Carter family were basically the first band that ever had a record deal. So to me, it just seemed terrible that they wouldn't give her a shot. I mean, I think there was some ageism involved because she was 70 at the time, but she had all these little jewels of songs that just needed to be put in a record. And I decided that since nobody was going to help me make the record, that I would start a record company myself. And I called it Small Hairy Dog because June loved that name after one of my chihuahuas. And we put out the record and it won a Grammy. So it's pretty amazing.
Probably a good decision then. That is just such an incredible story. And how did you have the know-how or even the industry expertise to know how to put out a record? I mean, I guess you'd worked with people enough to figure it out, or maybe had connections, but that must have been...
No, I really didn't know. I mean, I had the experience of working at Geffen Records under, David Geffen and some amazing A&R people like Gary Gersh and John Kolodner and Tom Zutot, but and then the independent label at Lookout Management, but I'd never done everything from start to finish. And I joint ventured with another record label, but I had no idea how to write a business plan at that point. I put it on brown and white paper and with the dog logo. It didn't look professional or anything. I mean, it was all trial and error. I finally got that label to joint venture with me, and then I went about picking the songs with June. She would send me, tapes that she and John Carter had made of all the songs she had written over her career. And we had to nail it down to 10 or 12 songs. And, I hired the producers, and it ended up being a guy named J.J. Blair, and John Carter Cash sort of co-produced the record, which was a great combination. And JJ had a studio here in LA, and we took all his gear to this little cabin in Nashville across the street from their house and made the record. I mean, it was so bare bones that it was cold. We started in October. We put a fire on, and the crackling from the fire would burn through on the track. So we had to wait until the fire burned down so we could actually record it. But it was very sweet. And, I think the highlight of my career, because most of the bands I've worked with, I started from the ground up when they were baby bands, but June Carter Cash and Johnny Cash were already legends. So, it was a little different scenario for me. I had great respect for them. And, every day June would say, let's go make a little history. And, oddly enough, we did. So, yeah.
You absolutely did. There's no doubt about that. And in such a very quick period of time too, right? So that, I think within a year and a half, you had won a Grammy.
Yeah.
That moment must have been just so, all that effort and time, finally getting the recognition that you deserve. And she deserves.
Pretty surreal, I've got to say. But, the best piece that came out of that was right before it won the Grammy, Johnny Cash called me and said to come meet them at the Four Seasons Hotel. And I went down there, and he took out the mock-up record that I had sent them down in Jamaica out of his coat pockets. And he's like, everybody says that, they want to take credit for this, but I know you did this. And it was just, so I don't know. Even thinking about it now makes me a little bit weepy. It was such a grand moment, because all he had ever wanted was for June to be more known for what she had done. And, people didn't even realize that she wrote Ring of Fire, which was, one of his biggest hits. So, so she got to do Ring of Fire the way that she did it. She wrote that song about falling in love with him, So, yeah.
Well, where did that passion and resilience come from within you?
I think I'm just really stubborn. It's like when I get something in my head that, I want to do, I will leave no stone unturned to do it. And, I kind of go by the philosophy of, you will get 1,000 no's, but you only need one yes. So you just keep going until you get that one yes. And I don't know. It's just an instinctual thing with me. It's like, I can't really tell you what I look for in an artist. I just know it when I see it, so, and when I see it, it's hard for me to let go of. It's like, I want to really try and help them. It's really about the music for me,
And it seems like, obviously you're in the music industry, but it's like, their voice needs to be heard. And if no one's willing to showcase their voice, you're going to be willing to do whatever you need to own your voice so that their voice can be magnified. And that support system that you create for them really makes sense why so many of the bands that you started with were babies when you met them, but you were really what would launch them into the stratosphere, right?
Well, that's kind. I can't say that they wouldn't have made it without me, but I certainly made it easier. I'm working with a little band called Love Past Blue right now, and they're 14 to 16, and I can kind of live my life through this 16-year-old singer, watching her make it. And I even feed her ideas for songs and things like that. And it's so rewarding to see it on the stage, It's like when it comes to fruition, you're just like, wow, I had something to do with that,
Just a little bit, maybe a lot, maybe a little bit, a lot.
Well, Leo is, amazing. She's a triple threat. She's a great singer, songwriter, performer. It's like, you only have to tell her things once and she's on it, It's like she's a real pro at a very early age,
What's your advice for up and coming inspiring music executives?
To listen to your own voice. There's a lot of people that will tell you how to be successful, but it's got to really resonate with you that it's the right thing to do, because 20 years from now, whether you make it or you don't make it, you're going to want to follow what you believe to be true. Otherwise, you're going to be blaming them for not being successful. So, and also too, people will tell you to do things in the music industry because of whatever is happening in that moment. But I personally believe that, if you stay true to yourself, the time eventually comes around to you. Got to kind of be a little ahead of the curve and just be, doing what you love to do. Because the only way these creative projects happen is if it's like authentic, I think. People know the difference. You have to give your audience a little credit. They know when it's being posed.
I would think that. I mean, you would also think that with all of the success that you've had and all the crazy stories that you have about some of these past clients, that a book deal for you would have just been kind of lining up. But that wasn't the case, was it?
No. Well, I did get a couple of offers for my book, but the advances were so terrible. I was like, wait, I just put 7 years of my life into writing this book, and you want to give me, $3,000? It's like, no. So I self-published and got an investor, and, I've been doing it that way. And now I'm to the point of where I'm trying to work out a television deal for it. And I've got Laura Keitlinger on board as a writer, and she's amazing. She works on Will and Grace and Two Broke Girls, and she did Saturday Night Live and Roseanne. I mean, she's amazing. But I still don't have a producer, but it will come. That's the other thing is about having tenacity. It's like nothing in this business seems to happen fast, so you have to just keep after it. That overnight sensation is kind of a myth. That's why when you see people at the Grammys going, they're thanking all these people and they're saying the overnight success of that overnight success was really, at least 10 years of work. And that's why they cry. They believed in themselves enough to stay in there in the game,
And for you, it feels like if you want to see change and it's something that's never been done before, sometimes you just have to do it yourself. It feels like a motto that you've had to just really live by to make these things happen. For whatever the reason may be, maybe it's ageism. I think a lot of people were probably fearful that you're a story were going to, maybe make them vulnerable to getting sued or something, because you're kind of talking about these very potentially sensitive situations that no one's really ever seen or heard before. But
no rock star wants to hear about their humble beginnings. So, I think the publishers were afraid of my book in that regard. But, everything in my book is true. So if they wanted to sue me, they would have to prove that it wasn't true. And if it's all true, they're not going to get to that. So.
Oh. Well, thank you so much for spending your time with me. You all have been hearing from Vicky Hamilton, legendary music executive, and I'm Shavon Lindley, Forbes contributor and CEO of Women Evolution. So make sure you click the link to check out this interview live on Forbes right now. And if you know of any other female leader that you think should be featured, you can follow the arrows to the top of my page, Shavon Lindley, and you can push the application button and you can apply for yourself or for someone else. And if you have any additional questions for Vicky, I mean, who doesn't? She's got so many stories she can probably tell and advice that she can give. We're going to be doing a live Q&A within the next 72 hours, so you need to make sure you like my page so that you can be updated on exactly when we're going to go live, and you can post your comments and we'll get those questions answered with Vicky directly. Thank you so much, and we'll see you at the next Forbes interview. Bye-bye.